Which games are must bets for week 2 of the 2024 NFL season? What's going on, football fans and gridiron gamblers? It's Mitch here with my best bets versus the spread for week 2 of the 2024 NFL season, giving you my 5 to 6 favorite spread picks every week of this NFL season. If that sounds good, Gronk spike the like button, subscribe for weekly NFL best bets and picks here on the BLV. And if you want to take that next step and get the games that I'm actually betting on, then you can sign up to Patreon. Link is in the description, also in the pinned comment. It's $10 a month to see what I'm betting each and every week. Now, in terms of our week 1 results, it wasn't pretty from a best bet standpoint. Our official picks only went 2 and 3 here on the channel. We did do well on Patreon, thankfully because of Tampa Bay and Detroit, who came in big, as well as the Niners on Monday Night Football. So Patreon, we did well. But then even our early picks, I shouldn't have faded myself a month ago or 2 months ago. I just overthought it for the final video before week 1. We were actually 5 and 3 a month ago, and we were 4 and 3 like 12 days ago. We did this video, the best bets of week 1, 3 times, and ultimately the third one was the worst. So that's just sometimes how it works. The line movement also had something to do with that, but we just overthought it. And in week 2, we're not going to overthink anything. Back to the basics, and we're also going to use our guys, OUTLIER, to help us break down these games. So let's begin with the first pick versus the spread, and I'm always going to start every video. Last week, it was Tampa Bay, which hopefully you guys bet on that game. This week, it's going to be Indianapolis at Green Bay as our favorite spread pick of the week. I love the Colts here because I think the Colts are playing one of the 5 worst teams without Jordan Love in football. I think the Packers are a contender with Jordan Love and a playoff team with Jordan Love, but the difference between Jordan Love and their backup Malik Willis, who you probably know and you've probably seen play, is substantial. Like, this is a giant drop-off. Meanwhile, I thought Indianapolis looked really good in week 1 from an offensive standpoint. Green Bay looked really rough on defense in week 1 against the Eagles, and I understand that there's extra time to prepare here, but there's travel involved. That's also a disadvantage for Green Bay, and I understand that this game is in Green Bay, outdoors, and not indoors for the Colts, but really just realizing the matchup, I feel like the Colts are actually a very similar offense to the Eagles. There's obviously a lot of carryover between the game of Jalen Hurts and Anthony Richardson. I think Richardson will be successful running the ball against Green Bay. I also think Jonathan Taylor, just like Saquon Barkley, could go off in this spot, especially if the Colts get an early lead. And if the Colts get an early lead, this game is just about over because Malik Willis cannot throw the football. He's an extremely limited backup quarterback. In my opinion, I wouldn't even want him on my team as a backup quarterback. I would want him on my team as a third string, a developmental guy, somebody that has talent, but has never shown anything at the NFL level in terms of passing the ball. I mean, the guy couldn't even execute a Hail Mary pass. So you're going from one of the young ascending quarterbacks in the NFL with a ton of talent to a quarterback that's pretty much one-dimensional, a good athlete who can run, but can't dictate and go through reads, can't really make proper throws, can't maneuver the pocket properly, holds on the ball too long. And I get it. Matt LaFleur is a great coach, and the experts out there are going to back Matt LaFleur in this spot because they're at home and because you want to back that backup quarterback in his first start because there's something of the unknown here. But I just don't see it with Malik Willis. And I think the Colts have a vicious pass rush. We saw that against CJ Stroud, who was constantly under duress. He was having to, make plays out of structure, and that's CJ Stroud. He's just amazing. He overcame it. But with Malik Willis, he's not going to have the same dimension to his game. I think the Colts can slow down the Packers in terms of their running game because they'll resort all their resources to stopping the running game. They're not going to fear Malik Willis throwing the ball over their heads at all like they were with CJ Stroud, which allowed Joe Mixon to go off in that game. I think that Gus Bradley will be all over his front seven to stop the run this week. And I'm not really concerned about the Colts' greatest weakness on their entire team, which is their secondary, because Malik Willis can't expose it. So I look at this as almost a gimme. I think 3 points, even on the road for the Colts here. I think the Colts are slightly underrated, slightly under the radar. I was very impressed by their offense in week 1 in terms of the explosive ability. I think they can definitely make plays. I would look out for Mitchell, the rookie, to make a couple big plays. Alec Pierce had a huge play in the game early on. I think Jonathan Taylor will get on track. He should be able to replicate that Saquon Barkley big running game as well. And again, Richardson is a stud. Like, this guy can make some plays that few quarterbacks can make. I think Shane Steichen's a great coach. He'll look at that Eagle tape, and I think he'll be able to do some similar things, being that he's also from Philadelphia. So that carryover is also there. So I see the Colts at the line of scrimmage being able to take it to the Packers, being able to get up early, being able to get after the quarterback that's very inexperienced and not a great passer. And I feel like the Colts should win this game. Like, by about 10 to 17 points. Like, I'd be genuinely shocked if the Packers pulled off this upset. Obviously, the Colts lost in week 1. It was a close game, but they want to get on track. They want to pick up this win. They realize the opportunity in front of their faces, and I think they'll get that victory. Like, Matt LaFleur has only had Malik Willis in his building for like 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks at the most. Like, he hasn't had enough time to actually change this guy's mechanics, change this guy's footwork, work on his game. Like, he's been focused on the regular season, focused on what he can do with Jordan Love, what he can do with this offense, get his team prepared and ready for the Eagles. He's had very little time to work with Malik Willis as this project quarterback. It just doesn't make sense why this spread is only 3, especially at 3, like it was at 3.5. I think it's money at 3, because even if you only win by 3, at least it's a push. With 3.5, you might have to worry about that Packers, come from behind where they're able to sneak through the back door and cover. But to me, this is my favorite bet of the week. So just taking a look at the outlier stuff. So in terms of trends and insights, the Packers, the over has hit in 8 of the Packers' last 10 games. Obviously, a lot of this is with Jordan Love, so this is probably not really going to help us too much, but the Packers are 4-1 in the last 5 home games. They are a good home team, I will say. The Packers are 2-4 against the spread in their last 6 games versus bottom 10 scoring defenses. That might be something to look at right there. Not exactly sure why, but that's just the case. And in terms of the public betting, the Colts are 78% of the bets on the money line, 80% of the money on the money line. In terms of the spread, the Colts are only getting 46% of the money while the Packers are getting 54%. Like I said, I think a lot of the so-called sharps are going to be backing the Packers because of Matt LaFleur. I just don't see it the same way. 59% of the bets are on the Colts, though, against the spread. And a majority of the money and the bets is also on the over. I've just seen Malik Willis play. I don't think he's any good, and that's what I'm backing in this scenario. So give me the Colts, -3. Richardson gets a big win and is first of the 2024 season. Now to our second best bet versus the spread for week number 2. It is the Jacksonville Jags at home opener, taking on the worst quarterback in the NFL, Deshaun Watson, and the Cleveland Browns. And once again, this is just a feeling, but I feel like this is going to be a sharp pick to take the Browns. And it's only because they're going to try to fade public perception. But I also feel like part of public perception is that Jacksonville let that game slip away against Miami, who I think is a better team than Cleveland, and they should have beat Miami in Miami if not for a Travis Etienne fumble. So I would turn that logic on its head. I would also say that Deshaun Watson is just flat out bad. There's nothing you can do to sell me that Deshaun Watson is better than bad. He is awful. He is atrocious. He is horrendous. So in this game, I love backing Jacksonville traditionally at home early in the year because of the heat. And I think that also comes into advantage with them playing at home in Jacksonville and then playing a team like Cleveland, who might not exactly be used to that heat and that humidity, quite like that Miami-Jacksonville game where it was fairly even in that regard, right? But that also actually hurt Jacksonville at the end of the day because it felt like Miami had the advantage in the fourth quarter, the third quarter, the second half, while Jacksonville had the advantage early, and they took it to them early. But I just saw a Cleveland team, man, on Sunday against Dallas that I think Dallas is good. Don't get me wrong. I don't think they're great. I expected regression from Dallas, and in their home building, a place where their defense typically played really well. On the road last year, they played really poorly, their defense. There was massive splits between home and road, so that's something to take into account. But as well, you're talking about a Cleveland offense that just didn't have an identity, didn't have anything that they really felt good about. They couldn't run the ball successfully. Their tackle situation was atrocious. They couldn't block Micah Parsons, DeMarcus Lawrence. This week, Trayvon Walker had multiple sacks last week, I do believe. And also Josh Hines Allen, who's one of the best in football on the edge as well. I think that our boy Ryan Nielsen is one of the best defensive coordinators in football. I thought he did a fantastic job at slowing down the Dolphins' running game. I think he'll do the very same against the Browns. If you take their running game away, they have no David Njoku, and Deshaun Watson, they can't trust him to throw the ball. They can't trust him to hit the target on time, in rhythm, with accuracy. Like, it's really bad. Like, I honestly feel like Jameis Winston would be an upgrade. And when that comes and Jameis starts, I'll probably back the Browns because I think the team will have more belief in him. They'll get up. I feel like the Browns right now, they don't trust their quarterback. They don't like their quarterback. I feel like they don't know what to do schematically. Feels like they're having a tug of war between we want to be this spread kind of pistol gun offense and we want to be Stefanski, traditional West Coast Shanahan offense, and it just isn't really working. And then on top of that, the Browns like to play man coverage. And I feel like, yeah, maybe the Browns could get a pass rush, and I do feel the Browns could do a decent job against Jacksonville's run game, but I feel like Lawrence and his receivers will be able to beat man coverage more consistently. Brian Thomas is a big play threat on the outside. Evan Ingram from the tight end spot is a mismatch, as well as Christian Kirk in the slot. So I feel like they have a variety of weapons than Travis Etienne out of the backfield that they can go to against man coverage as well. I would expect this to be a lower scoring game with Jacksonville shutting down Cleveland's running game. I trust Lawrence more in this setting. I trust Jacksonville at home. I feel like they're good in that home opener. So I like Jacksonville minus the field goal as well. Let's see what OUTLIER has to say if there's any trends that pop out. So the over has hit in 8 of the last 8 Cleveland Browns games on the road. So if you do want to bet the over, that's maybe an intriguing look. I did say I think it's going to be a lower scoring game. Jacksonville is 6-3 in their last 9 as a favorite. That's on Jacksonville money line. Jacksonville is also 6-3 against the spread in their last 9 games as a favorite. That trend helps us as well. In terms of the money line, 86% of the bets on Jacksonville, 86% of the money, identical on the money line for Jacksonville. Spread-wise, 88% of the bets are on Cleveland, which is shocking, while 93% of the money is on Jacksonville. That doesn't even feel right or accurate. Maybe that's incorrect. I'm not exactly sure, but that feels very odd to me. And meanwhile, a majority of the bets are on the over, while a majority of the money in this game is on the under, which would also back my statement. So I think the trends do back us in this spot for OUTLIER. If you guys do want to check out OUTLIER as well, there will be a nice little link for you guys to check out in the description if you want to use these tools to help you bet. Then next up, our third favorite pick of week 2 is the Houston Texans versus 6 on Sunday Night Football versus the Bears. And the Bears looked absolutely atrocious. I'm talking atrocious, okay, in week number 1. And somehow they won the game. Like, somehow they won, and it is what it is. But I love the Texans in this game. I liked the Texans last week. We barely missed out on a cover. If the Texans hit on a 2-point conversion, they likely cover in that game, and that's just the way betting on the NFL goes. They were up by 9 points. The Colts scored the final touchdown to make it closer, right? And that's just the way the NFL is sometimes. That backdoor is always open when you're laying a field goal. But why I love the Texans. So there's a lot of hype for the Texans, and they're at home for the first time this year. I feel like that correlates in terms of fan excitement, fan energy, atmosphere, like the whole crowd noise. It's Caleb Williams. There's a reason for this fan base to be really excited when the Bears have the football. It's Caleb's first road game in the NFL. They played at home last week. He didn't even throw for 100 yards. When you look at the actual drives they had, like Chicago didn't really do anything at all on offense. That's not exaggerating. Like they had a 2-point conversion. Otherwise, they got a field goal off a forced fumble. They got a touchdown by an interception on defense. They got a punt block for a touchdown. They got another, I think it was an interception that put them into field goal range. So none of their points really were because the offense moved the ball. And that was against Tennessee. Like, I think a pretty good defense, good secondary. I think Houston at home, right? That was Chicago at home. This is Houston at home. I think Houston's at-home environment is going to help them because I think their pass rush is going to be able to really disrupt Caleb. Like, Caleb likes to hold on the ball, run around, like Danielle Hunter on the edge, Will Anderson on the edge, Fatu Kazi and Mario Edwards looked good in week 1. I thought they did a great job against Jonathan Taylor. I think they'll completely slow down the Bears running game, which is pretty finesse and pretty soft, in my opinion. Like, I think the Bears will be one-dimensional. I think Derek Stingley can go toe-to-toe with DJ Moore, and it's really relying on a receiving core that Keenan Allen's kind of banged up already. He's probably going to play, but if that's the best you got, Rome Odunze is probably going to be out. So this receiving core that was so potent before the season's already kind of banged up. Shane Waldron's scheme looked atrocious with Caleb at the helm in week 1. They don't feel like they know what they are, and now they're going on the road. This really has the makings of a blowout. Like, I get that the Bears defense is good. Like, I really thought the Bears defense played well, but that was against Will Levis on the road in a new system with a bad offensive line. This is like arguably the best offense in football with the best receiving core in football. Nico Collins looked amazing. Stephon Diggs looked like he was already at home. Joe Mixon looked like the best running back in football in week 1. Like, the offensive line is healthy. They've got that connection between Slowick and Stroud from play caller to quarterback. I mean, I really think the Texans could run the ball well in this game, considering how they ran it in Indianapolis. I think they could run it well here in this game, considering Tony Pollard had some success for Tennessee, and that was their main area of focus in their running game. I think the Texans could run the ball, which is going to open up some ability to throw the ball because you can't really overcompensate for the run of the Texans because their receivers are so good. So, and with the Texans, like, it's CJ Stroud. Like, I thought there were guys open for Levis. He just didn't hit them all, like, or he didn't see them all. Like, Stroud is going to be able to extend the play better. He's just going to be able to overcome the pass rush more. He's going to be able to make those pinpoint throws when they're there. He's going to hit them. Like, there's just such a huge gap between the Bears facing the Titans at home and the Bears having to go to a dome, perfect environment, you know, silent count, no silent count, right? Like, the energy of being at home for the Texans, like with Stroud, like this could be a blowout. Like, I wouldn't be shocked if Caleb plays the way he did last week. So that's why I like the Texans. I didn't love it at 7, but now that we're at 6, I feel like the Texans should win by a full touchdown at the very least. So yeah, I like the Texans. I'd also like the Texans in, you know, this is also Sunday night. So again, that's another reason, like Sunday night, you get up for those games. You're going to be playing with a lot of energy. And that's another reason for the fans to get up for these games. But I mean, yeah, I like this one a lot. I think the Texans are going to bring the hurt to the Bears and really make a statement of who they're going to be this year. Because I thought they were good in week 1, but I felt like they could have been a little bit better. So let's see what Outlier has to say about this matchup. So the Bears are 4-1-1 against the spread in their last 6 games as an underdog. That contradicts our claim. The one, CJ Stroud has failed to exceed 0.5 interceptions in 8 straight games if you want to bet on Stroud to not throw an interception. He has also exceeded 270 passing yards in 5 of his last 6 at home, which is what I'm saying, 311 on average. So he usually goes off at home. The Texans are 7-2 in their last 9 games at home on the money line. The Texans under has hit 6 of the last 9 games at home. If the under does hit, I feel like it's because the Texans defense plays well, and they do typically play better at home. And in terms of the public betting, 92% of bets on the money line are on the Texans. 97% of the money is on the Texans. In terms of bets on the spread, 87% of the spread bets is on the Bears, while 92% of the money is on the Texans. Again, that does not make sense to me, but that's the way it looks on OUTLIER. So we're going to trust them on that. So yeah, this is one that, again, just the more you think about it, the more it makes sense. This feels like San Francisco, New York Jets from last week, where it's like, you might be enticed by the Bears. They have talent, but do they have it all together right now? I just don't think so. I think the Texans have that kind of cohesion that you're looking for early in a season at home in a primetime setting. Next up, we've got the Bengals plus 5.5 on the road at the Chiefs. Now, the reason for backing the Bengals here is a few different reasons. First of all, Joe Burrow always seems to play well against the Chiefs. Secondly, the Bengals always seem to play the Chiefs very well, including last year with Jake Browning. Third, that also kind of combines with Zach Taylor always having good game plans against the Chiefs and Steve Spagnuolo. He kind of has his number. And then lastly, this is a bounce back spot for the Bengals. This is a time to buy low on the Bengals. And obviously the Chiefs have extra time to rest and prepare. That doesn't do us any favors. I preferred this spread at 6 for sure. And I bet it at 6, which is why you should sign up for Patreon. But with 5.5, I'm still going to take it. Although it's a dead number sort of at 5.5, I'm still going to take it considering the history of this matchup. There's not really a lot to go on here other than I just trust that the Bengals are better than they showed in week 1. I watched the entirety of the game. I was live for the entirety of the game. They didn't look great, but I will say the Patriots have an elite defense. The Patriots have a very good running game, and the Chiefs have a good defense, a very good defense, but I honestly don't know if it's as good as New England's, as well as the fact that I feel like their run game is not as good as New England's. I feel like their run game was pretty bad against the Ravens. I would also say that the Bengals just didn't show up. And they still could have won. They fumbled entering, the end zone. They fumbled the ball like it was at the goal line, and Hudson fumbled the ball. There was a muffed punt that allowed New England to get points. If one of those two things don't happen, they probably win, and this line's probably only 4.5. So to me, I think the Bengals didn't show up. They kind of took the Patriots for granted. They were looking ahead to the Chiefs. I think there was many reasons to really kind of feel like the Bengals, didn't play their best. I do think that Burrow is going to be much more motivated, trusting on who he is as an individual. Jamar Chase, very same. I think that the Bengals are going to be able to run the ball a bit on the Chiefs in this game. I thought Zach Moss was fairly efficient with the limited carries he got. I also think that Chase is going to be a bit of a problem for the Chiefs now that they don't have L'Jarius Sneed. And I think that the Bengals defense actually looked pretty decent against New England in week 1, especially from a secondary standpoint. So I just think this is going to come down to the wire. I think both offenses will have their success and move the ball, but I think it's basically going to come down to the wire. And in that type of game, I'm going to take the points every single time in this sort of rivalry setting. So it's pretty simplistic, but I'm just going to take the points with a team that I feel like is coming off a really rough week 1 performance. They always come out of the gates real slow, and I think this is going to give them that boot in the behind that they desperately need playing the champs. So let's take a look at what OUTLIER says. Do they contradict us or do they help us here? So a lot of props, but the Chiefs are 7-3 against the spread in their last 10 games at home. Okay, that's pretty interesting. They're also 7-3 on the money line at home. The under has hit in 12 of the Chiefs' last 18 games. That's a pretty strong trend if you want to take the under. I actually feel like the under might not be a bad play, including the look at how Cincinnati's offense looked in week 1. I feel like, that's pretty interesting as well. In terms of the public betting, 94% of the bets were on the Chiefs, 6% are on the Bengals. 94% of the money is on the Chiefs, identical there. 6% of the money is on the Bengals. Meanwhile, the spread, 80% of bets is on the Bengals. Only 12% of the money is on the Bengals. I'm kind of starting to wonder if this is incorrect, if OUTLIER has it wrong, because that's 3 games in a row that I feel like that was incorrect. But I don't know. I'll have to check that on a different platform. But I feel like that probably is right. I mean, they were right about it last week. But, it's pretty interesting that there's 68% of bets on the over and 60% of the money on the over. I do think the under, what's the total here? So the total is 47.5. That does feel high to me. Like, I honestly feel like this could be like a 24-20, 24-21 type game. I wouldn't be shocked by that, honestly. So, the under might not be a bad play as well. If you take the points as well, obviously the lower the score is, the better the points are worth. So, yeah, that's an interesting game, but I'm just trusting the track record of the Bengals playing the Chiefs, playing them close. Then, our final best bet before our bonus pick is the Pittsburgh Steelers -2.5 at the Denver Broncos. This one is, I feel like I'm just betting on the better team, and I feel like I'm betting on the dominant Steeler defense. That if you really break it down, like the Steelers were +3.5 last week. They went into Atlanta. They won by 8 points, 18-10. Atlanta was considered a far better team than Denver. They went into Atlanta and they did that. Now they have, a worse team where they're going once again on the road. And I feel like they can beat Denver by an identical margin that they beat the Falcons. Now, I understand that's not how the NFL works, but at the very base level, that doesn't sound like a bad bet to me, right? Secondly, I think Pittsburgh's defense is just nuts. And I'm going to back that in every scenario I can. Like, I think rookie Bo Nix is really going to struggle with this pass rush. He's going to struggle with the pass rush. He's going to be under duress, all the different blitz angles, all the different simulated looks, all the different zone blitzes that the Steelers are known for, as well as just the four-man rush that is absolutely going to cause nightmares for the young man. Bo Nix looked terrible in week 1. He couldn't throw the ball past the line of scrimmage or past 5 yards. He had very little success throwing the ball down the field. I feel like Sean Payton is a good coach, but so is Mike Tomlin. I'm not really giving Payton any sort of advantage in this setting. I also felt like the Steelers did a pretty good job against one of the best run games and running backs in football, Bijan Robinson. So I'm not too convinced Javonte or McLaughlin are going to have success on the ground. I think Joey Porter can lock down Sutton, and meanwhile, the Broncos don't really have other targets that are meaningful. So I just don't see how the Broncos score more than like 14 points. Like, they're going to have to win this game like 14-13 or something like that. Like, it's going to be really low score for the Broncos unless they get a bunch of turnovers, which is possible. The Broncos will be aggressive. They'll bring the heat. They'll put Surtain on George Pickens. But honestly, like, I feel Pittsburgh can run the ball on Denver. Like, Kenneth Walker ran the ball well, and that's kind of their formula. If Fields can run it a little bit, and I thought Arthur Smith had a good play calling, like, overall throughout the day against Atlanta. Like, it wasn't a super successful offensive day, but I think Atlanta's defense is kind of underrated with their new arrivals, and their front seven's good against the run. Like, Denver was one of the worst run defenses last year. Atlanta was one of the best. Now you kind of swap that, and Najee could have maybe a 100-yard day here. You throw in what Fields can do on the ground. You throw in the screens to the backs and to the tight ends and a couple of plays from Pickens, and I feel like that will be enough to cover this. Like, 2.5, not quite a field goal. I like it. At 3.5, I'd probably stay away. But at 2.5, I feel like Pittsburgh can win this game 16-13. I feel like they can win 17-14. I feel like they can win 20-14. Like, something like that where it doesn't even have to be by more than a field goal, but it does feel like Pittsburgh is the decisively better team. They have more talent. They're going to be able to do what they want to do, which is run the ball, and that's going to set up Fields for success. And I just think Fields is more of a playmaker than Bo Nix at this point in his career. And I understand fading Denver in their home opener is traditionally not a great idea, but I just feel like Pittsburgh will be prepared because they have Mike Tomlin. So in terms of the insights, on OUTLIER, Najee has exceeded 56.5 rushing yards in 4 of the last 5 games. I would back that if I'm looking at a prop. Steelers, the under hit in 6 of the Pittsburgh Steelers' last 9 games on the road. The Steelers are 4-2 against the spread in their last 6 games on the road. So there you go. Like, the under, that sounds about right. This is the lowest total of the week, 36.5. That's crazy. Broncos are 5-1 in their last 6 games at home. That's also pretty interesting. I think they lost to the Patriots, if I'm not mistaken. The Steelers are 4-2 against the spread, so that's kind of contradictory right there. But in terms of the public, 88% of the bets are on the Steelers, 92% of the money on the money line. 12% of bets are on the Steelers So I'm kind of fading the public here. 12% of bets on the Steelers against the spread. 34% of money is on the Steelers. 66% on the Broncos. I just kind of feel like the Steelers are quarterback proof. They're a team that everybody wants to fade because they play ugly football, but I just think they're better than people actually give them credit for. So the Steelers -2.5 is our fifth and final best bet. Now our final bet in this video as a bonus pick. That is the Raiders +8.5. And the way I'm going to use this bonus pick, which is how I used it for week 1, is I'm basically going to use it as if there's line movement and I don't quite exactly love the line anymore, but I wanted to bet this and wanted to give it out on the channel, I'm still going to use it. So, like, for example, this is this Raiders game where I bet this at 9.5. It's moved a full point to 8.5. So I kind of moved it off of my best bet section into like a bonus pick section. So you might still like it, but just not quite as much. So in terms of this matchup, I just really like a couple of things. First of all, Minshew on the Colts last year walked into Baltimore and beat the Ravens. So he's, for whatever reason, he beat Lamar last year. He played well in that game, did enough to win, and on a different team altogether, but he still showed that he could go into Baltimore, manage the game, and get it done. So that's first and foremost. Secondly, okay, the Raiders' defensive line has a decisive edge over the Ravens' offensive line. The Chargers actually have a pretty good tackle duo, right? So they weren't overwhelmed by the Raiders' front. The Ravens could not block Chris Jones, could not block the Chiefs all day, and Lamar was running for his life. Max Crosby, Christian Wilkins, Malcolm Kuntz, these guys could really wreck this game for the Ravens. So I think that is a huge edge and perhaps the biggest edge in the game. Meanwhile, I wasn't impressed with the Ravens passing attack. I thought it was way too conservative, way too underneath oriented. I think Nate Hobbs and Jack Jones are kind of these smaller, quicker corners that can cover Zay Flowers. Likely will probably have a day once again, you would think, but I'm not really super elated by what I saw from Derrick Henry either. I think the Ravens are just overall overrated by their performance of, nearly tying that game with the Chiefs. I feel like they showed a lot of flaws. They showed flaws in the middle of the field of their coverage. I think Brock Bowers could have success. I liked how Adams looked. I liked how Myers looked. I thought Minshew played well. They turned it over 3 times. They had 2 opportunities to go for it on 4th and 1s, and they didn't. They missed a field goal. So I felt like the Raiders could have won that game against the Chargers. It looks like they got blown out to a certain degree, but they easily could have won. Their defense looked real good. I think they could find success running the ball a little bit against the Ravens. So I just think this is too many points in a game where I think there's a huge edge. The biggest edge in the game is Raiders D-line versus the Ravens O-line. And I saw this quarterback beat Lamar last year, and there's just too many things and I feel like Pierce has been hearing all week about how he was too conservative. This is the type of underdog that I want to back. So I think the Raiders will be hungry in this game. Nobody thinks they can win. They'll go out there and they'll show out and they'll play competitively because of their defense. So I like the Raiders plus the points here. I don't think the Ravens are quite deserving of all this respect. So looking at, any of the trends here, Ravens are 5-2 against the spread in their last 7 games as a favorite. The Raiders are 1-7 in their last 8 games on the road. That doesn't exactly help, but that's on the money line. The under is hit in 11 of the Raiders' last 16 games. So that might be the play if you don't want to take the points. But if you do take the points and you take the under, that also kind of correlates as we've discussed. But the under might actually even be a better play based on kind of my analysis of the game. And then also the trend. The public betting, 2% of bets on the money line is on the Raiders. 7% of money is on the Raiders. 98% of bets on the Ravens. 93% of the money on the Ravens. 76% of the spread bets on the Raiders. 24% on the Ravens. 21% of money on the Raiders. 79% of money on the Ravens. And then most of the bets is on the over. Most of the money is on the under. So there you go. Maybe the under is a look in that game as well. Well, there you guys have it. Best bets for week 2. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. If you did, Gronk spike the like button. Don't forget to subscribe. Check out OUTLIER and check out the Patreon for all of my bets each and every week this NFL season. It's Mitch. Thanks for watching. Peace.